The lunch rush had already begun when Emily Parker tied her apron and stepped onto the restaurant floor. The cafe sat on a busy street in Boston, surrounded by office buildings and small shops. Every weekday, dozens of customers filled the place from morning until late afternoon. Emily had worked there for nearly 4 years. Most days felt exactly the same. Customers arrived, orders were taken, meals were served, bills were paid. Then everyone disappeared back into their lives. It was simple, predictable, safe. At 27 years old, Emily appreciated predictable things. She lived alone in a small apartment only 15 minutes away from the cafe. Her life wasn't exciting, but it was comfortable. At least that's what she believed. That Tuesday started like every other day. The sun shined brightly through the large front windows. People walked past carrying coffee cups and briefcases. Inside, conversations mixed with the sound of plates and silverware. Nothing seemed unusual. Around noon, a man entered the cafe. Emily noticed him immediately, not because he looked dangerous, not because he acted strangely, but because he seemed completely out of place. The man appeared to be in his late 60s. He wore a dark gray suit that looked expensive but old-fashioned. His silver hair was perfectly combed. His shoes looked polished enough to reflect sunlight, yet his expression carried a sadness Emily couldn't explain. He quietly chose a table near the window. Alone, Emily approached with a friendly smile. "Good afternoon. What can I get for you today?" The man looked up. For a brief moment, surprise flashed across his face, as if he recognized her. Then the expression vanished. "I'll have the grilled chicken sandwich and a black coffee." His voice sounded calm, polite, but distant. Emily wrote down the order. As she turned away, the man spoke again. "Excuse me." She stopped. "Yes." The stranger studied her face carefully, almost too carefully. Then he simply smiled. "Nothing. You remind me of someone." Emily laughed politely. "Hopefully someone nice." The man nodded. "The nicest person I've ever known." For some reason, the answer stayed with her, even after she walked away. A few minutes later, she served his meal. The customer thanked her and returned to staring outside. Throughout the next hour, Emily remained busy. Families arrived. Office workers filled tables. Orders piled up. The afternoon rush reached its peak. She barely thought about the older man again. Then something unexpected happened. When Emily returned to clear his table, he was gone. The coffee cup was empty. The plate was clean. The chair sat neatly pushed in. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. A folded piece of paper rested where the plate had been. At first, Emily assumed it was a receipt, or maybe a shopping list. She picked it up casually. Then she noticed her name written across the front. Emily. Her smile disappeared. Customers occasionally left compliments, sometimes even phone numbers. But nobody should have known her name. She never wore a name tag. The cafe had stopped requiring them months ago. Emily unfolded the paper. Inside, only one sentence appeared. "Ask your mother what happened on June 12, 1999. She stared at the words. Confused, her heart began beating faster. June 12, 1999. The date meant nothing to her. Not immediately. She read the sentence again. And again. Then something clicked. Emily suddenly remembered. That was her birthday. Exactly 27 years ago. A chill ran through her body. How could a stranger know that? Why would someone leave a message about her birthday? Most importantly, why mention her mother? For several minutes, Emily stood frozen beside the table. Her manager eventually called her name. "Emily, table 7 needs service." She quickly folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. The rest of the afternoon became a blur. She smiled at customers, took orders, delivered food, but her thoughts remained fixed on the mysterious message. When her shift finally ended, she drove directly to her mother's house. The small suburban home looked exactly as she remembered. White fence, blue front door, flower garden near the porch. Ordinary, comforting. Yet as Emily stepped out her car, she felt nervous, almost afraid. Her mother, Sarah Parker, greeted her with surprise. "Emily, I wasn't expecting you." Emily forced a smile. I wanted to ask you something. Sarah immediately sensed the seriousness in her daughter's voice. What happened? Emily entered the house. Neither woman sat down. The tension felt too heavy. Finally, Emily removed a folded note from her pocket. She handed it over. Sarah opened it. The moment she read the sentence, all color drained from her face. Emily had never seen that expression before. Shock, fear, and something else. Guilt. The note slipped from Sarah's fingers. Neither woman spoke. For several seconds, the room remained completely silent. Then Sarah whispered 4 words. Words that changed everything. I hope nobody knew. Emily's stomach tightened. Knew what? Sarah looked toward the living room window, as if searching for courage, or perhaps searching for a way to avoid answering. But she knew the time for secrets had ended. Slowly, she sat down. Her hands trembled, and when she finally looked at Emily again, tears filled her eyes. What I'm about to tell you, she said quietly, will change the way you see your entire life. Emily felt her breath catch. Outside, children rode bicycles down the street. Neighbors watered their lawns. The world continued normally. But inside that house, something enormous was about to be revealed. Something connected to her birthday. Something connected to the mysterious stranger. And something connected to a secret that had remained buried for 27 years. Emily had arrived expecting answers. She had no idea she was about to discover a question far bigger than anything she could imagine. Emily remained standing. Her mother's words echoed through the room. What I'm about to tell you will change the way you see your entire life. Sarah wiped her eyes. For several moments, she struggled to speak. Finally, she took a deep breath. Emily, before I tell you anything else, you need to understand one thing. Emily waited. Sarah looked directly at her. I have always loved you. The statement sounded strange, almost like an apology. Emily felt her heart pounding faster. Mom, what is this about? Sarah glanced at the note again. Then she closed her eyes. The man who left that message wasn't trying to scare you. Emily frowned. You know who he is? Sarah nodded slowly. Yes. The answer only created more questions. Then who is he? Sarah hesitated. His name is Richard Bennett. Emily had never heard the name before. It meant nothing to her. But Sarah's expression suggested otherwise. He was once one of the most respected businessmen in Massachusetts. Emily crossed her arms. And why would he leave me a note about my birthday? Sarah's voice became quiet. Because he has been looking for you for years. Emily stared at her. The room suddenly felt smaller. What are you talking about? Sarah swallowed hard. Then she finally said the words. Richard Bennett believes you're his granddaughter. Silence filled the room. Emily couldn't process what she had just heard. Granddaughter? It made no sense. Her grandfather had died before she was born. Everyone in the family knew that. She shook her head. That's impossible. Sarah didn't answer immediately, which frightened Emily even more. Mom. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. Your grandfather wasn't the man you grew up hearing about. Emily felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. What do you mean? Sarah stood and walked toward a small cabinet in the corner. From the bottom drawer, she removed an old box, one Emily had never seen before. Dust covered the lid. Sarah carried it carefully to the table. Her hands trembled. Then she opened it. Inside were photographs, letters, documents, and newspaper clippings, items that looked decades old. Sarah handed Emily a photograph. The picture showed a young woman standing beside a handsome man in a navy suit. Emily immediately recognized the woman. It was her mother, years younger, maybe 20 years old. The man beside her was unfamiliar. Who is he? Sarah looked down. His name was Daniel Bennett. Emily felt a strange sensation in her chest. The last name matched Richard Bennett. Slowly, pieces began connecting. Richard's son? Sarah nodded. Emily stared at the photograph. The man had dark hair, confident eyes, and an easy smile. For some reason, he seemed familiar, almost like looking at a distant relative. Then Sarah delivered another surprise. Daniel was your father. Emily froze. The photograph nearly slipped from her hands. My father? Sarah nodded again. Emily's mind raced. Growing up, she had always been told her father died before she was born. A simple explanation. No details. No stories. Whenever she asked questions, Sarah became emotional. Eventually, Emily stopped asking. Now, everything felt different. Why didn't you tell me? Sarah covered her face. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Sarah pointed toward the documents inside the box. Emily pulled out one newspaper clipping. The headline immediately caught her attention. Local businessman's son disappears. Her eyes widened. Another article. Another headline. Missing man search continues. Then another. Family offers reward for information. Emily looked up. Confused. Disappears. Sarah nodded. 3 months before you were born, Daniel vanished. Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. Vanished. No one ever found him. The room fell silent again. Suddenly the story she believed her entire life seemed incomplete. Her father hadn't died. He had disappeared. There was a difference. A huge difference. Richard spent years searching for him, Sarah explained. He hired investigators, organized searches, followed hundreds of leads. Emily stared at the articles. And they never found anything? Sarah slowly shook her head. No. Emily sat down. Her head felt dizzy. Questions flooded her mind. Why had her mother hidden this? Why would Richard wait 27 years to contact her? And why now? Then she noticed another photograph inside the box. This one showed Richard Bennett, much younger than the man from the café, standing beside Daniel. Father and son. Emily looked closely. Her stomach tightened. The resemblance was obvious. The same eyes, the same smile, the same facial features, and somehow the same features she often saw in her own reflection. A knock suddenly interrupted the conversation. Both women jumped. Emily looked toward the front door. Are you expecting someone? Sarah shook her head. No. The knock came again. 3 slow taps. Emily felt an uneasy feeling. Something wasn't right. Sarah carefully approached the door. When she opened it, nobody stood outside. The porch was empty. The street looked peaceful. Children played nearby. Cars passed normally. Nothing unusual. Then Sarah noticed a small envelope resting near the welcome mat. Her face instantly turned pale. She picked it up. The envelope had no stamp, no address, only one word written on the front. Emily. Sarah slowly handed it over. Neither woman spoke. Emily opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Nothing else. No message. No explanation. Just a photograph. At first glance, it appeared ordinary. A man sitting on a park bench. Daylight. Trees. People walking in the background. Then Emily looked closer. Her breath stopped. The man on the bench was Daniel Bennett, her father. The same face from the old photographs. But this picture wasn't old. The clothing looked modern. The image quality looked recent. Very recent. The date, printed in the corner, confirmed it. 3 weeks ago. Emily's hands began shaking. Mom. Sarah stared in disbelief. No. Emily looked from the photograph to her mother, then back again. The impossible truth stood right in front of them. If the picture was genuine, then Daniel Bennett had not disappeared forever. After 27 years, he was alive. But before either woman could speak another word, Emily noticed something else. In the background of the photograph stood another person, partially visible, watching Daniel from a distance. A tall man wearing sunglasses. Most people would have ignored him. Emily almost did. Then she recognized the face. It was the elderly customer from the cafe, Richard Bennett, which meant only one thing. The mysterious note had never been about the past. It was a warning. And whatever Richard Bennett had discovered, he wanted Emily to find it before someone else did. Emily stared at the photograph. Her hands trembled. The date, printed in the corner, remained impossible to ignore. 3 weeks ago. If the picture was real, then her father had been alive all this time. 27 years. 27 years without a phone call, without a letter, without a single message. Nothing made sense. Sarah sat silently beside her. Neither woman knew what to say. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "We need to find Richard Bennett." Sarah nodded. For the first time in years, she seemed ready to stop running from the past. The next morning, Emily called a café before her shift began. To her surprise, the manager already had a message waiting for her. "A man came by this morning asking about you." Emily's heart raced. "Richard?" "I think so. He left this." The manager handed her a business card. On the back, a location had been written: Boston Public Garden. 11 a.m. Emily checked the clock. It was already 10:30. Without hesitation, she headed downtown. The day was bright and warm. Families walked through the park. Tourists took photographs. Children chased pigeons near the pathways. Everything looked normal. Yet Emily felt as if her entire world was changing. Near a large fountain, she finally spotted Richard Bennett. The elderly man sat alone on a bench, waiting, as though he knew she would come. When Emily approached, Richard stood slowly, his eyes filled with emotion. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Emily held up the photograph. "You owe me an explanation." Richard nodded. "Yes." They sat down, and for the next hour, Richard revealed a story Emily never could have imagined. 3 months before her birth, Daniel Bennett had vanished. Police suspected an accident. Some suspected foul play. Others believed he had chosen to disappear. But Richard never accepted any explanation. For years he searched, following leads across the country, hiring investigators, tracking rumors. Most led nowhere. Then 6 months earlier, everything changed. A retired journalist contacted him. The journalist had been researching unsolved disappearances. While reviewing old records, he discovered something unusual. A man living under a different identity. A man whose photograph resembled Daniel Bennett. Richard investigated immediately. At first, he assumed it was another false lead. Then he saw the evidence. The man was Daniel, alive, living quietly in a small coastal town. Emily listened in stunned silence. "But why?" she asked. "Why would he disappear?" Richard looked away. The answer clearly pained him. Because someone wanted him dead. Emily felt a chill. Richard continued. 27 years earlier, Daniel had uncovered a massive financial fraud involving several powerful individuals. Millions of dollars had disappeared through illegal investments. Daniel planned to expose everything. Before he could, threats began arriving. At first, he ignored them. Then things became serious. Cars followed him. Anonymous calls appeared daily. Strangers watched him. Daniel realized he wasn't only risking his own life. Sarah and their unborn child were also in danger. According to Richard, Daniel made an impossible decision. He disappeared, not to abandon his family, to protect them. Emily struggled to process the revelation. He left us to keep us safe? Richard nodded. He believed it was the only way. Tears formed in Emily's eyes. Part of her wanted to understand. Another part felt angry. 27 years was a long time. Far too long. Then why didn't he come back? Richard sighed heavily. Because he believed the people involved were still watching. Emily stared at the ground. The explanation answered some questions, but not all. Then she remembered something. "If you found him 6 months ago, why contact me now?" Richard's expression changed. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. "Because someone else found him too." The words landed heavily. Emily's stomach tightened. "What happened?" Richard handed her another envelope. Inside was a newspaper article. The headline immediately caught her attention. "Local man saves child from traffic." Below the headline was a photograph. The man in the picture was Daniel. Older, gray-haired, but unmistakably Daniel Bennett. Emily stared at her father's face for the first time in her life. Then she noticed the publication date. 2 weeks ago. A terrible feeling grew inside her. Richard's voice became quiet. 3 days after that article appeared, Daniel disappeared again. Emily looked up sharply. "What?" "No one has seen him since." The park suddenly felt colder. People continued walking nearby, laughing, talking, completely unaware of the conversation taking place. Emily's mind raced. Had someone taken him? Had he gone into hiding again? Was he alive? Richard leaned forward. "That's why I contacted you." Emily frowned. What can I do? Richard reached into his jacket pocket. Slowly, he removed a small key. Old, silver, worn from years of use. It belongs to a safety deposit box. Emily accepted it carefully. Richard continued. Daniel left instructions. If anything happened to him, this key was meant for his daughter. Emily stared at the key. Her daughter. Not Sarah. Not Richard. Her. The realization hit hard. Despite everything, Daniel had never forgotten her. Richard stood. We should go. An hour later they arrived at a downtown bank. Sarah met them there. Together they entered the vault area. An employee escorted them to a deposit box. Emily's hands shook as she inserted the key. The lock clicked. Slowly she opened the box. Inside rested a single envelope. Nothing else. No money. No valuables. Just an envelope. Across the front, written in careful handwriting, were 4 words. From my daughter Emily. Tears immediately filled her eyes. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photograph showed a young Daniel holding a newborn baby. Emily. The letter began simply. Dear Emily, if you're reading this, then life has unfolded in a way I always feared. Every day since you were born, I hoped I would return. Every year I planned to come back. But fear kept winning. Fear that the people I escaped would find you. Fear that my presence would place your life in danger. Most of all, fear that you would hate me. Emily wiped tears from her face. The letter continued. I watched from afar, whenever I could. Your first day of school. Your graduation. Even your first day at the café. You never knew I was there, but I was always proud of you. Richard and Sarah exchanged shocked looks. Emily continued reading. Then she reached the final paragraph. And everything changed. The greatest secret isn't where I've been. The greatest secret is who saved me. For 27 years, everyone believed Richard Bennett spent his life searching for me. The truth is different. Richard found me years ago. He protected my identity. He gave up his reputation to keep me alive. He became the father I could not be. If you're reading this, trust him completely. He is the reason you're alive today. Emily slowly lowered the letter. Tears streamed down Richard's face. For decades he had carried the burden alone, not because he failed to find his son, but because he succeeded, and sacrificed everything to protect him. Suddenly Emily understood why Richard had looked at her so carefully in the cafe, why he had waited, why he had left the note. He hadn't approached a stranger. He had approached family. The family he had secretly watched over for 27 years. Months later, investigators finally located Daniel Bennett, safe, alive, and ready to come home. The reunion wasn't perfect. 27 years could not be erased overnight. There were tears, questions, awkward silences, and difficult conversations. But there was also something stronger. Hope. On a bright spring afternoon, Emily stood outside the same cafe where everything had begun. This time she wasn't serving customers. She was sharing lunch with her mother, her father, and her grandfather. 3 generations sitting together at one table. The mystery that started with a simple note had finally ended, not with treasure, not with fame, not with fortune, but with something far more valuable. A family that found its way back to one another after nearly 3 decades apart. And for Emily, that was worth more than any secret in the world.